Hi, my name's Clive Paget, and I'm the features editor for Musical America. For our 2024 Musical America Awards, we've selected 5 remarkable artists, each of whom has made a unique contribution to their art form. In this interview, News and Special Reports editor Susan Elliott speaks with our Composer of the Year, Kevin Putz. With a Grammy and a Pulitzer already to his name, Kevin's is an enthralling and unique voice that seems to reach out and touch all people's hearts. I hope you enjoy it.
First of all, I want to say congratulations on your being named Composer of the Year. Certainly it's well-deserved and long time in coming. I want to ask you how you feel your music has evolved. It's a pretty broad question. Since Silent Night, I mean, do you feel that when you were working on Silent Night, you were at a sort of a place in your compositional development that was where you wanted to be, or did you feel like you were still sort of emerging, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess the answer to that is that I'm one of the things I'm working on at the moment is that I'm revising Silent Night quite heavily. The Met is going to do the opera in a future season, and so a couple of other companies as well. And so I sort of thought I would take a look at it and maybe want to tweak some things. And it turns out I want to tweak every single vocal line in the opera. The opera will feel the same. I think most people won't notice, but the singers will notice, and I think the audience will feel something more, hopefully more, with these adjustments. And Mark Campbell and I have also made a few little edits as well. Added a little bit to a scene and put the chorus in a couple of scenes. But I guess the answer is that I never really feel, unfortunately, I never feel totally satisfied with anything that I've done. I mean, there are pieces that I don't change anymore, that I leave and let people perform them. But I think with Silent Night as my first opera, and I launched into it with joy and vigor. I mean, I really, getting the libretto, putting it on the piano, playing the piano and singing the first lines was just a thrill, and something that I felt, I guess I was 39 when I'm 38, 40. How old was I? Something like that when I wrote it. And I thought, why haven't I done this? Why haven't I tried to do this earlier?
Well, now, for your first opera, it won the Pulitzer in what, 2012?
Yeah, 2012.
So that's not a bad
yeah,
not a bad beginning.
Well, I mean, I think I find that I was very honored, obviously, to win the Pulitzer, as I feel to have this honor as well with being the Composer of the Year. But I feel those things are sort of luck. I mean, you do your best to write the best music you can, and you get it in the best shape you can before the premiere, and then you hear the premiere, and then you maybe make further adjustments. But I think what I loved about the process of writing Silent Night was that it did feel natural, and it didn't feel like something I needed to learn, though there were many other things I needed to learn, was the storytelling part of it. Was it just the sort of cinematic approach to moving through a story. The music just sort of came to me quite without a whole lot of effort, from scene to scene, and so there's a lot of music in it. I mean, it's been described as a polystylistic opera, and I'm not sure that was my plan going into it, but there were so many instances in the libretto that seemed to call out for different styles to exist, that I just sort of went with it, and I tried to tie it all together with a kind of a theme, that a war theme that keeps returning. But anyway, I guess I would have thought I wouldn't do that again, but I mean, the hours is maybe not as polystylistic, but certainly there are different worlds that the different musical environments that the three characters inhabit, and that I'm playing against one another. So maybe I haven't changed that much in Silent Night. I don't know.
Well, are you, speaking of the hours, are you planning on making adjustments to that as well?
I have made, yeah, it's gonna, it'll be back at the Met next spring, and there are a couple of things. There's a transition that I tightened up, and there's a moment that I felt in the first act just sort of died, and I was reacting to a stage direction that says Laura and Richie sift the flour together. So I was trying to write flour sifting music, which doesn't turn out to be that compelling. So anyway, but at the same time, Clarissa, Renee Fleming's character is on the stage, and she's just sung this aria, and she's about to go into Richard's apartment and confront him once again with his illness and the reality of his life. And so I've rewritten this transition to be about her what's going on with her internally, and I think it's more compelling.
What do you feel is the strongest part of the hours? But I was incredibly impressed with the orchestration. I just wondered which was your favorite part of working on it.
Well, I think what I have learned since Silent Night is how to write for the voice, and especially with three, incredible divas that as I worked with Renee, Joyce, and Kelly, and the kind of not only being inspired to write well for them, but feeling some kind of responsibility to write well for them too. I mean and not just because everyone I knew was coming to hear them sing, and to really sing, to sing in the way that they like to sing and that people like to hear them sing. There was a lot of pressure in that. I'm not going to do certain things that a 21st century composer might do when I know that they won't embrace them really as artists. And so it allowed me to write the way I really wanted to write, for the voice, lyrically, with long lines and duets sometimes where they would be in close kind of counterpoint with one another, in trios eventually, in the opera. And the process for me of writing an opera is very satisfying, because I start with the voices and piano, and I spend whatever it takes, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, to get all of that right, and to make sure that it sings well, that the singers, in this case these three amazing sopranos and mezzo, were happy with the way that their lines sang, and made sure that the pacing of the opera was the best I could do given the libretto, and the harmony, the kind of just the dramatic thrust of it was the way I want. And then once that's set, I spend another year orchestrating, and it's not a last minute kind of put the icing on the cake. It's something I really involve myself in, and I love the process of making these decisions, of sort of tinkering with what can be done in the orchestra, to let the orchestra play in the same way that the singers play, in a way that celebrates the best things that they can do in each section of the orchestra and as a unit. But it's that process is so fulfilling for me. I almost don't want it to end, when I begin. So I appreciate your saying that about the orchestration, but it's something that I revel in, really, and
it definitely shows. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's an incredibly important part of the way an opera works. We always talk about the vocal lines. Are there, everybody, they hear an opera, there are no memorable melodies, and well, I mean, we do our best, but I think that the orchestra can convey so much emotionally.
Right.
It can move the opera along in various ways, and it can create variety, where things could be very sameish, for lack of a better word. without the variety of a large orchestra and what that can accomplish.
Right, right. So speaking of the return of the hours, what are you working on these days?
Well, I didn't plan. I didn't want anything to invade my work on the hours, or the stress or the kind of aftermath of a premiere of that magnitude. For me, which was the biggest thing I've ever done for sure, and maybe I ever will do. So I didn't schedule anything, any premieres like in the months or even the year following. So all the stuff I'm working on right now is going to be premiered in 2025, 26, or thereafter. So I'm doing, as I said, I'm working on the Silent Night revisions, which are I'm really excited about. Actually, I'm excited to sort of, it's like an overhaul of the opera. I'm working on I'm working on a new violin concerto for Joshua Bell. And
Great.
also what I'm really excited about is, okay, so I loved working with Joyce DiDonato, who is so wonderful as Virginia Woolf in the
Yeah.
hours. And I loved working with Time for Three, for whom I wrote Contact, and it's a concerto for the three of them, an orchestra that they're playing quite a bit, different orchestras around the world.
Which won a Grammy Award. I'm just
Yes, it did. Kevin Puts, and this is a new concerto written for my friends, Time for Three.
Still would do the break where you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what it sounds like.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
1, 2, fuck the boom, boom.
And so I thought, well, what if I brought the four of them together? Like, these are people, artists who I have such deep respect for, and people who are just, I just had a feeling that the four of them together something good would happen. And it turns out, I mean, at least initially I'm right, because we all got together in Joyce's apartment last year, and it was definitely, there's a good feeling in the room. So I'm working on a big piece based on, I have it right here, just out of luck. Oh, can you see this? Yeah.
yeah.
It's a little blurry. Okay. So it's I'm not sure what it is that how I feel compelled to work to write pieces about women writers of the past. Time for Three had been thinking about, we had been talking about my doing something with voice, with voice and the three of them,
Mhm.
two violins and bass, and they also sing. They sing
Right.
really beautifully. So, and I thought of Joyce, of course, and then I thought of Emily Dick. I can't remember how I came around to Emily Dickinson, but the discovery of, I mean, not discovery of her poetry. Of course, so many people have set her poetry to music, but all 1,600 of these poems, and many of them that are not as well known as others. It's just been a kind of fascinating dive into her work, and a kind of exploration which has no, I mean, there's no form to the piece yet. I'm just kind of like finding poems and then setting them to music. And I don't know the order yet. There are some musical interludes which are inspired by the poems, which will give Joyce a break, from singing. But this is a full album kind of piece that we're working on. So anyway, those are two things, and I don't
Is
think
that just the three of them and Joyce, or is it the three of them and Joyce and orchestra, or?
Just the four of them, just the four of them. So it's really, after having worked on a massive opera for the Met, something for four performers is a welcome kind of relief.
Are you able to work on more than one piece at a time?
I never have before. I've always wanted to stay, with one thing. I
Right.
guess when I was writing the hours, I also worked on Contact for Time for Three. I think those two pieces, I think I had to work on them at the same time, just because it had to happen. But usually I don't, and it's really interesting actually that I'm doing that now, and I guess just out of necessity, because all these pieces are kind of piling up in the same couple of years, a couple of years down the road. And I don't mind it at all. Actually, I like the variety. You know, and I will actually sort of be like in the way that we encourage our son to do his homework. Like I'll do like an hour. I'll do like, you know, I'll do a half hour, an hour of the Silent Night revisions, and then I'll move to this new piece, and then I'll think about Josh's concerto, yeah, it's good variety.
Do you have a fair amount of space between each one? I mean, do you work on Josh's piece in the morning and the time for 3 at night, or?
No, I don't have, you know, I work whenever I can. You know, we have a 13-year-old son who's has to be driven to various tennis tournaments, cello lessons, soccer games. So whenever I can work, whenever the house is empty is when I work. So I tend to do everything in a space of a few hours during the day. So that's how I work.
And when do you teach? I'm sure you encourage them all to, you know, use their own voice and all those good things. But since you admittedly write a little differently from what many composers of our time seem to be doing, which is all to the good, I might add, how do your students react to that, or do they?
That's a really good question, and I feel like I never get asked that. I never get to talk about, you know, my voice and you know, how is it that I am, you know, how is that the voice at odds, or how is it, you know, backward looking, or you know, however you want to put it. I mean, I think my voice does respond to a lot of music that's out there today. I mean, either in you know, so-called classical music or film music or pop music, and of course there are other influences that are pretty obvious, but I'm kind of stuck with it. You know, it's like I think I read this quote recently that Rachmaninoff, I'm sure you know this quote, that he said, I feel like a ghost sort of walking among the living. He's tried to embrace the music of his time more heartily, but is just sort of unable. You know, and because, you know, when you address the page or the screen or whatever it is these days, as a composer, and you're trying to say something meaningful, the materials that you feel close to, that you feel you can be expressive with, are just what they are, you know. And it's you know, it's not a statement. I'm not making a statement. Well, this is what I believe. You know, it's very much not dogmatic in any sense at all. It's just like, this is I want this to be performed by these people in my name at this event or whatever, and this is what I find powerful, and these are the materials that I want to use to express that. And there's just you know, anything else would be selling out. I mean, frankly, I mean, it would just be like trying to pretend I'm someone I'm not. And I think that's what I teach my students.
It's been delightful talking to you. You are so wonderfully articulate about your
good.
It's not common among composers to be able to.
Oh, really? I always think I'm not. I had a coffee before this, so I was afraid I would be less articulate than. So I'm glad you. Thank you for saying that.
Great. It was wonderful. So thank you. Congratulations again. I'm just delighted that you are our composer of the year. I can't think of anyone who deserves it more than you.
Well, that means it means a lot to me. I was so excited to hear about it, and I really deeply appreciate the honor.
Thank you for your interest in the 2024 Musical America Awards, and please feel free to check out the interviews with our other honorees.